You should spend less time looking at your watch and more time learning how to be a human being. Hannah stood on the wet pavement, her eyes locked on the man in the tailored suit. Rain beaded on his shoulders, but he remained perfectly still, watching her with a quiet, terrifying curiosity. She gestured toward the elderly man trembling on the ground near the luxury sedan. Wealth doesn't give you the right to treat people like a stain on your clothing, Hannah said, her voice vibrating with heat. You're a textbook example of silver spoon arrogance. The stranger didn't explain. He didn't mention that the victim on the ground was a professional scammer he'd caught extorting people. He simply tucked his wallet away and stepped closer, forcing Hannah to tilt her head back. He studied her with a quiet, terrifying curiosity, as if he were cataloging a rare species of person he hadn't encountered in years. You have a lot to say about a situation you don't understand, he said. His voice was a low, dangerous velvet. Hannah let out a sharp, mocking breath. I understand enough. You have a big bank account and a very small soul. She turned on her heel and disappeared into the gray soul mist, leaving the most powerful man in the city standing in the rain. The executive floor of Apex International was silent enough to hear the hum of the air conditioning. Hannah straightened her blazer, her posture the result of 3 years of disciplined excellence. Hannah, her retiring boss Mrs. Kong said with a weary smile. I've built this legacy for 30 years. I wouldn't trust it or my son to anyone but you. You're the heartbeat of this office. Hannah bowed slightly, a swell of pride grounding her. I'll make sure he succeeds, ma'am. The heavy doors at the end of the hall swung open. A man walked in, his silhouette tall and imposing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. He moved with a slow, predatory grace, unbuttoning his charcoal jacket as he reached the head of the table. Hannah's breath hitched. The air suddenly felt thin. It was the eyes. The dark, unreadable gaze from the rain last night. Siwoo didn't look at his mother. He walked straight to the edge of the desk where Hannah stood. He leaned in, his voice a low simmer only she could hear. A small soul. The room went deathly silent. Hannah felt the blood drain from her face. Siwoo watched her for a beat, the corner of his mouth twitching. I'm Siwoo, your new CEO. Mrs. Kong, he always loved to address his mom by her name in a professional setting, has told me a lot about you. I suspect, Miss Hannah, that we are going to spend a lot of time together. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eye, then turned to address his mom, leaving Hannah standing in a trance, the realization of her mistake hitting her like a physical blow. The silence in the room didn't break until the heavy doors clicked shut behind Siwoo. Hannah stood frozen, her fingers digging into the leather folder in her hands. She could still feel the phantom heat of his breath against her ear. The small soul comment was a ghost in the room, hanging over her like a heavy cloud. Hannah, are you all right? Mrs. Kong asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Hannah forced a smile, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. Yes, ma'am. Just taking it all in. It's a big change. He's a lot to handle, Mrs. Kong whispered, looking toward the door where her son had disappeared. But he's fair. Usually. Hannah spent the next 3 hours in a state of quiet panic. She sat at her desk, which sat right outside the CEO's massive glass office, and stared at her computer screen. She tried to focus on the transition schedule, but all she saw was the rainy street and the way Siwoo had looked at her when she called him a small soul. At 2 p.m. the intercom buzzed. It was a sharp, aggressive sound. Miss Hannah. My office. Now. Hannah stood up, smoothed her skirt and took a deep breath. She walked in and found Siwoo sitting behind the desk. He wasn't looking at a computer. He was looking at a single piece of paper, her resume printed. 3 years, he said, not looking up. You started in the junior pool. You caught a $10 million error in the Busan branch files. My mother promoted you on the spot. I was just doing my job, sir, Hannah said, keeping her voice steady. Your job, he repeated. He finally looked up. His eyes were even darker in the office light. And does your job description include screaming at strangers in hotel driveways? Hannah's face heated up. Sir, about last night. I misunderstood the situation. I thought. You thought you were a hero, he interrupted. He stood up and walked to the window looking out at the Seoul skyline. You saw a man in a suit and a man in rags, and you decided who the villain was before anyone spoke. That's a dangerous trait for a PA, Hannah. It means you let your emotions blind you to the facts. Hannah bit her lip. She wanted to defend herself, to say that she hated seeing people bullied, but she knew it would only make things worse. It won't happen again. It won't, he agreed, turning back to her. He dropped a thick stack of blue folders on the desk. These are the last 5 years of our U.S. distribution audits. There are inconsistencies. I want a full report on every single one by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Hannah stared at the stack. It was at least 1,000 pages. Sir, that's impossible. It's already mid-afternoon. Siwoo sat back down and picked up a pen, dismissing her without a second glance. I thought you were the heartbeat of this office, Miss Hannah. Prove it. Or find a job where your big soul is enough to pay the bills. Hannah picked up the folders. Her hands were shaking not from fear but from a sudden sharp spark of anger. He wasn't just giving her work, he was testing her. He wanted her to break. She walked out of the office and sat at her desk. She didn't look at the time. She didn't look at the other staff members heading home at 6 p.m. She just opened the first folder and started to work. She was going to show him exactly why she belonged in this chair, even if it took her all night. By 9 p.m. the executive floor was a ghost town. The only light came from the blue glow of Hannah's monitor and the dim safety lamps along the hallway. Her eyes burned and the numbers on the audit sheets were starting to dance across the page. Yore, Hannah's work bestie, stopped by her desk on her way out. She was dressed for a night out, her earrings sparkling under the office lights. You're still here? Yore asked, her voice tilting with a mix of pity and something else Hannah couldn't quite name. Hannah, it's Friday night. That stack looks like a death sentence. Did the new Prince Charming really give you all of that? He wants it by 8 a.m., Hannah said, rubbing her temples. He's testing me, Yore. He wants to see if I'll quit. Yore leaned against the desk, looking toward Siwoo's closed office door. He's being so mean to you. It's totally unfair. If it were me, I'd probably cry. You're so strong for staying. She reached out and patted Hannah's hand, but her eyes were busy scanning the top folder. Do you want me to stay and help? I mean, I have plans, but... No go, Hannah sighed. It's my mess to clean up. I'm the one who opened my mouth in the rain. Well, don't work too hard, Yore said, heading for the elevator. As the doors closed, a small, satisfied smile played on Yore's lips, a smile Hannah didn't see. An hour later, the door to the CEO's office swung open. Siwoo walked out, his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. He stopped when he saw Hannah still hunched over her desk. He looked at her, then at the half-empty cup of cold coffee sitting next to her keyboard. You're still here, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm finishing the 2024 records, sir, Hannah replied without looking up. I'll start the 2025 files shortly. Siwoo walked closer. He picked up her cold coffee cup, made a face at the dark liquid and set it back down. The office kitchen is empty. Go home, Miss Hannah. You look like you're about to fall over. I have a job to do, she said, her voice tight. And I don't leave things half done. Especially not when my big soul is on the line. Siwoo stood there for a long moment. The silence between them wasn't cold like it was in the morning. It was quiet, filled with the hum of the city outside. He walked away toward the break room and returned a few minutes later holding a fresh, steaming cup of coffee. He set it down on her desk. It's black. No sugar. It'll keep you awake. Hannah looked at the cup, then up at him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Siwoo said, his voice dropping to that low, serious tone. I found a mistake in the 2023 summary you just finished. Page 42. You missed a decimal point. If I hadn't caught it, we would have overpaid the vendor by $60,000. Hannah's heart sank. I'll fix it right now. Accuracy matters more than speed, Hannah, he said. He turned to leave but stopped at the door. My mother said you were the heartbeat of this place. But even a heart stops if it's pushed too hard. Finish the 2024 files and go. That's an order. He disappeared back into his office. Hannah took a sip of the bitter hot coffee. It was strong, exactly what she needed. She flipped back to page 42, her jaw set in determination. He was watching her every move, waiting for her to fail. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Monday morning arrived with a heavy gray sky. Hannah had spent her entire weekend resting her eyes, but the moment she stepped back into the office, the tension returned. She had finished the 2024 files as ordered, but something about the numbers was bothering her. As she sat at her desk, Yore walked by holding 2 expensive-looking lattes. She set one on Hannah's desk with a bright smile. You look exhausted, babe, Yore said, her voice loud enough for the nearby staff to hear. I can't believe he made you work all night Friday. People are already whispering that he's trying to push you out so he can bring in his own team from America. Hannah took the coffee, feeling a lump in her throat. I'm not leaving that easily, Yuri. I hope not. But honestly, if he hates you this much, maybe it's not worth it? You're so talented. You could go anywhere, Yuri whispered, leaning in close. I'd be so sad if you left, but I'd understand. Hannah didn't have time to answer. The intercom buzzed 3 short, sharp bursts. That was Siwoo's "get in here" signal. When Hannah entered the office, Siwoo was standing by a whiteboard covered in graphs. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. He pointed to the report Hannah had left on his desk that morning. The 2024 audit, he started, his voice flat. You found the discrepancy in the shipping costs. Yes, sir, Hannah said. The numbers didn't match the weight of the cargo. It looked like someone was overcharging the company for ghost shipments. Siwoo turned to face her. My mother told me you caught a similar error 3 years ago. That's how you became her PA. You have a gift for seeing what others want to hide. Hannah felt a small spark of pride, but she kept her face neutral. I just like things to be honest, sir. Honesty is expensive, Siwoo said. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. The person behind those ghost shipments is still in this building, Hannah. They've been stealing from my mother for years, and they've stayed hidden because they know how to play the game. They probably think I'm just a rich kid who won't notice. Hannah looked at him, surprised. For the first time, she didn't see the rude boss. She saw a man who was deeply protective of his mother's hard work. Is that why you gave me all those files? To see if I would catch them again? I needed to know if I could trust your eyes, Siwoo admitted. He handed her a small encrypted flash drive. This contains the private accounts for the marketing department. I want you to cross-reference them with the shipping logs. Don't tell anyone. Not even your best friend out there. Hannah took the drive, her pulse quickening. This wasn't just busy work. It was a mission. I understand. As she walked out of the office, she caught Yuri watching her from the break room door. Yuri's smile didn't reach her eyes this time. Hannah felt a sudden chill. In a building full of glass walls, it was hard to know who was watching and who was waiting for you to trip. Hannah sat down and plugged in the drive. She had been the one who yelled at Siwoo for having no soul, but as she looked at the secret data, she realized they were now in the same boat, surrounded by people who smiled to their faces while digging a hole beneath their feet. The office felt different on Tuesday. The air was thick with a kind of quiet electricity that made the hair on Hannah's arms stand up. She spent the entire morning buried in the marketing accounts Siwoo had given her. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that the ghost shipments weren't just mistakes. They were a deliberate trail leading away from a much bigger theft. Around noon, Yuri appeared at Hannah's desk. She wasn't carrying coffee this time. Instead, she held a stack of physical mail that